Hey y'all, I just beat Resident Evil 9 Requiem and here's what I think about it. In this video, I'll be talking about this game's pacing, both characters, the story, the length and replayability, the opening act, and how this game acts as a celebration of the franchise. Quick note about spoilers. I won't be sharing any story spoilers, however I will allude to some events in the story without getting any context. I will also be talking about the second half of the game and sharing some things that some may consider slight gameplay spoilers. I'll only be talking about details that were revealed in trailers, however please just keep that in mind. Despite that, I still think you can watch this video before playing the game. I'm a huge fan of Resident Evil, with it being probably one of my favorite franchises of all time. I've completed every single modern game, 0 and Remake, 4 through 6, both Revelations games, and even Operation Raccoon City. I also hope to play/beat the original versions of 2 and 3 sometime this month as well. I say all this because, while I may not have completed every single RE game, I still know a lot about the series and should have some authority on it. Resident Evil 6 is probably my least favorite game in the franchise, not because of how it doesn't feel like an RE game, or it loses the horror aspect or whatever. It's just not a very well made game with a not so good story and boring gameplay. The worst part about Resident Evil 6 is just that it was way too long, featuring 4 different campaigns, each with their own goals. Resident Evil 6 was meant to be a celebration of the franchise, catering to as many fans as it possibly could by mixing horror and action together. It just didn't work, and what should have been the franchise's biggest moment ended up almost killing it. I bring this up for one big reason. See, Resident Evil 9 is the 6th game in this new modern era of the franchise. Requiem is also trying to be a celebration of the series thus far, as well as trying to cater to as many fans as possible by mixing action with survival horror. Resident Evil 9 is the modern equivalent of Resident Evil 6, and honestly, it's really hard to overlook that. I wouldn't say I was worried, especially due to Capcom's great track record and consistency lately, but in the time leading up to release, this thought never really left my mind. After finally being able to play and complete RE9, however, I can thankfully say that Requiem is not only a great game, but also what 6 should have been all along. I think the biggest improvement from RE6 is that the pacing of this game is much better. In 6, there were 4 campaigns, each being about 4 to 5 hours long, with some of the same areas in multiple campaigns. This led to that game feeling overly long and repetitive in some sections. You could also play the campaigns in any order you wanted, leading to even more inconsistent pacing as well as harming story progression. Requiem, on the other hand, has almost perfect pacing, with only 2 campaigns, each lasting about 5 hours long. Requiem does much more than 6 during its runtime, despite being almost half the length. Unlike 6, Requiem does not have any repeated areas and is always doing something new due to its short runtime. Requiem's 2 campaigns cannot be played in any order and are instead 2 halves of one larger campaign. By taking this approach, Requiem is able to control the pacing much better. It knows when you're getting bored and when to do something new because the game was literally designed to be played in a specific way. Requiem is just filled with set pieces, one of my favorite being when the new mechanic of being able to shoot glass out under enemies to kill them is introduced, literally for only one area and then never seen again. Even small sections like this show that Capcom learned from RE6 and knows how to make a fantastically paced and fun video game. Capcom took much bigger lessons from Resi 6, with the biggest being how to balance having multiple campaigns and playable characters. Requiem is split into 2, with the first half focusing on Grace and the second half focusing on Leon. While both characters are technically playable in both halves, letting each character have their own specific section of the game is a really great idea, as it allows the player to get invested with that character's story and gameplay. I think the biggest reason Capcom was able to pull off the multiple playable characters thing here in Requiem is because of one thing: gameplay diversity. Grace's section takes up the first half of the campaign and is supposed to be the more horror-centric half. The opening of her section is probably one of the strongest parts of the game, where the player needs to crawl around pitch-black halls of the hospital while being chased by a shadow monster who cannot step in the light. This entire section is based on the concept of safety in light and being in danger in the dark. The game utilizes this idea multiple times through Grace's campaign in many ways that I won't spoil. I do want to point out one scare early in the game that stuck with me, however. You're taught that you're safe in the light and not in the dark, which naturally means you're going to be turning on lights as much as you can. At one point, you turn on the light, illuminating a dark hallway, to see someone staring at you at the end of it. Upon walking closer, you see it's actually a statue and you are safe the entire time. Scares like this only work because of the game's fantastic atmosphere and sound design. The game tells you that you should be safe in the light, but you're still scared anyways. All that comes together to create the scariest game in the franchise since RE7 back in 2017. The other way Requiem keeps you scared is by having the player stay relatively underpowered the entire time. From what I understand, Grace can only acquire 3 different weapons during her section. 2 pistols, one of which is easily missable, and the Magnum, which is given no ammo for the first half of her portion. While I do think this aspect does a great job at keeping the game scary long term, I actually think it hurts the resource management that is key to the series. Grace's half is essentially just what if RE2R and RE7 were combined, and it does a really fantastic job at achieving that. It's able to perfectly mix the horror of RE7 with the puzzle solving of RE2R. What both of those games have that this one doesn't, however, is a real sense of progression and ramping up stakes. I missed the second pistol on my playthrough and never had any reason to use my Magnum, so I essentially had one gun as Grace the entire game. The thing is, the game is designed around this to the point where besides 1 or 2 sections, you don't actually need to use your gun or kill anyone at all. Most zombies can be easily snuck past or distracted by throwing glass bottles, which means the game moves away from resource management and more into stealth. You're not really meant to kill anything as Grace unless you absolutely have to, which takes away from the decision making of previous RE games. I never had to ask myself if I should kill a zombie because 90% of the time the answer was gonna be no. Guns in Grace's half of Requiem are just meant to be get out of jail free cards if you get cornered or something, and I think this made a lot of the moment-to-moment gameplay lose a lot of tension. Because of this, by the end of the game, I had almost 60 pistol bullets for Grace on standard casual difficulty and absolutely nothing to use them on. Grace's objective is to find 3 glass cubes in order to unlock a door. She can find one in the east wing of the hospital, one in the west wing, and the last one by doing stuff in both wings. The west wing is the one you go into first, and this is where I think this issue is heightened the most. The west wing is filled with tight corridors, tons of zombies, and almost no pistol ammo at this point. I literally just was slowly walking around these zombies, occasionally getting grabbed or whatever, and it was just kind of annoying and boring. The game gives you plenty of healing resources at this point, but your inventory is so small at the start that you can't pick much up. I just don't really think it's a great start to the first real area of the game. Grace's section gets much better as it goes on, I'd say. At the end of the West Wing, you unlock the ability to buy upgrades with coins found in the environment, directly lifted from Resi 7. I love this idea here in Requiem as it directly rewards the player for exploring the environment rather than running through it as fast as possible. You can buy a health and firepower upgrade as well as an inventory upgrade. The inventory and health upgrades are essential as it just makes the game much easier to play. The firearm upgrade is much less essential, I'd argue, as, like I said, you don't really need to do much killing here. I wouldn't skip it or anything though, as the game gives you at least 4 more coins than you need to buy all 4 upgrades, which is another fantastic choice, I'd argue. By giving the player a bit of wiggle room, it allows players to play the game in the way that they want to, rather than just having to look up a YouTube video of all coin locations. The final upgrade you can buy is for the Blood Collector. The Blood Collector is actually a really fantastic addition to the franchise, I'd say, as it not only rewards the player for exploring, but also killing enemies. The Blood Collector can get 100 units of blood, upgraded to 150 with the shop. You collect blood off the ground in buckets or meat chunks, as well as occasionally dropping from enemies. You use the blood to craft items, which creates a really great loop of crafting an item to kill an enemy, collecting its blood, and using it to craft another item. You can craft pretty much anything, including health and firearm upgrades. The best are the injectors, which you can use to silently one-hit kill almost any enemy in the game. Once you unlock the injectors, the stealth loop becomes much better, as you actually have to go back to making decisions. Do I wait to try and sneak past this zombie or quickly kill him to get by faster? Requiem does a fantastic job at giving just enough injectors that you're able to comfortably use them without giving so many that they become a crutch. Beyond the West Wing, Grace's section just gets better and better. Once you finally unlock a few upgrades, get the Blood Collector, and see a few set pieces, you're gonna be hooked. I do think that this section does slightly continue to struggle with the tension of resource management and continuing to be scary when you're not being chased by a stalker enemy, but overall, this is a great half to the game. I see a lot of people saying that this is the best part of the game and the best part of any RE engine game. While I personally like Leon's section much more, I do think that Grace's portion does a fantastic job at recapturing the survival horror era of the franchise and is a fantastic first half of the game. Leon's portion is the second half of the game, and I'd say it's much better than the first half due to it literally just being RE4 remake, with maybe even slightly better pacing and an infinite durability hatchet. I've seen a lot of people say that Leon's portion is a lot weaker than Grace's, and I'm honestly not really sure, as to why. This is literally the perfect dichotomy to the first half of the game, as it goes from not killing anything at all to killing everything in sight, all while still trying to scare the player. Despite being action-oriented, I think Leon's campaign perfects Resident Evil's resource management loop and puzzles. I do want to quickly point out, however, that before Leon goes to Raccoon City, you are able to play as him a few times during Grace's section. I actually think this is one of the bigger missteps with this game, however. During these points, you get to play as Leon for 5 to 10 minutes at most, and then it just goes back to Grace for an hour or so. I just really don't understand why these are here, as they don't really serve any purpose besides narrative. I don't think they really serve to break up the pace of Grace's section, because the entire point of her portion is that the pace is constantly building as things get worse and worse for her. Leon's portion just kind of kill that pacing for her and really don't add much, as it's not too fun to play as Leon for just 5 minutes. Once you actually get into Leon's part proper, however, things get much better. His half is essentially just a mini RE4R with all the same bells and whistles. You can parry objects, melee enemies, have all the same types of guns, hell, you even have the same inventory system. There's really only very small changes here. For example, instead of a knife that you have to pay to repair, you get a hatchet which you can sharpen and repair yourself. I actually think this is a really great change, as it incentivizes the player to kneecap enemies and finish them with the hatchet more rather than just killing them with a shotgun or something. Leon has a lot more finisher animations too, I'd say, but other than that, it's mostly the same. The progression is also the exact same as in RE4R, just a lot shortened. In this game, you can only buy one weapon of each type besides the sniper, which has to be found in the world, and upgrade them. You gain combat points from killing enemies in the world or finding them rarely as items. I was able to fully upgrade every single item besides the Magnum, which I missed 2 upgrades on. While I do wish there was more to upgrade, for the length of Leon's portion, I think that they nailed the amount of progression here. I was able to almost fully upgrade all of my weapons by the end of the game, and I think that's enough for me. Leon's objective in his section is to find 3 pieces of a bomb, although it's a lot more interesting than it sounds due to the fact that you can find them in any order you like. This section really scratches that Resident Evil itch for me, as you're given a huge area, an objective, and just told to explore it. There are tons of hidden rooms and paths that you can take that reward you with extra loot and combat points. If you explore fully, you'll have more than enough resources to kill everything, although you still always feel that pressure of just about running out. Getting key items in this area is also fantastic, as they can potentially open 2 to 3 different areas filled with loot. Leon's portion of the game takes the best parts of RE4R, my favorite Resident Evil game, and changes them just enough to make them fresh for this game. The pacing, combat, exploration, puzzle design, and resource management here are just top-notch and easily the best part of the game. While I understand the more action combat-heavy Leon section may not be what everyone is looking for from this game, for me it was exactly what I was looking for after the slow and terrifying Grace sections. Leon and Grace's sections are so wildly different that they are able to achieve what RE6 couldn't, having multiple campaigns to appeal to multiple different fans of the franchise. Requiem uses gameplay diversity to keep the pacing of both sections fresh, using set pieces and unique mechanics to keep the pacing high. On top of this, by contrasting the slower first half of the game with the more action-heavy second half, each half feels more impactful with their goals on what they're trying to do. I mean, look at the different camera perspectives. Grace is first person and Leon is third person because those perspectives fit those sections best. Instead of trying to throw a bunch of random ideas at a wall and seeing what sticks, Capcom is making deliberate choices here in Requiem in order to make the best game possible, and it works. Because of this, Requiem feels a lot more authored, less boring and repetitive, has much better pacing, and is just all around a more interesting and better game. The story in this game is nothing too special, especially by Resident Evil standards. I'd argue that RE games are better known for their gameplay rather than their story, and that's definitely the case here too, I'd say. There is a central mystery going on for the entire game that I do think gets more and more interesting as it goes on. It does kind of call back to a lot of the original entries in the franchise, and I worry that new players may get a bit lost with all the callbacks to previous events and the like. I also want to briefly touch on the main villain of this game, who is fine for what he is. He is literally exactly the same as every other Resident Evil villain, and I think that some people may have a problem with that. I, however, didn't mind as much. He worked fine enough for me. Leon's character in this game is a really solid adaptation of him, I'd say. He's just as funny as he was in RE4R, with my favorite line from him being, "I think I want a second opinion," after dodging a Dr. Zombie with a chainsaw. His arc focuses on him returning to Raccoon City, dealing with survivor's guilt and PTSD from the events of RE2. I think that this is a really interesting characterization for him, as we've not really seen this side of Leon before. At the end of the day, he's still the same action hero that we all know and love, and I'm really glad for that. Grace is a much more controversial character in my opinion. People online seem to either love her or hate her, and I can certainly understand why. I myself honestly hated her at the beginning of the game. She is a very shy character who can hardly even say a full sentence half the time without stuttering. I understand that this is supposed to be a more realistic approach to someone in this situation. Like, yeah, if I was in a zombie-filled hospital, I'd act like this too, to be honest. For a series like Resident Evil, though, I'm not sure if it really fits. As the game goes on and you learn why she acts this way, as well as her growing as a character, I liked her more and more. While she may not be my favorite RE character, I think she is a pretty good co-lead for this game. While I love Requiem, I don't think it's a perfect game by any means. One common complaint I've seen online is that people find the game to be too short, and others defending this game saying, well, all the Resident Evil games are short. While it is true RE games are usually short, and honestly this game is probably just as long as most other entries in the series, I don't think people are entirely off base for saying this game feels short. While the game featuring 2 playable characters is great for pacing and gameplay diversity, I do think it has one unintended side effect. It makes this game feel a lot shorter than it actually is. By the time I was done with Leon's half of the game, I was just left feeling honestly a little unsatisfied. I was having so much fun with the game and I just wanted more, and unfortunately Requiem didn't have anything left for me. RE2R has 2 campaigns, so once you finish one, you can go right into the other one and get that next fix. RE4R, on the other hand, is just a long-ass game, meaning by the time you're done with it, you're gonna feel fulfilled. Requiem, on the other hand, has 2 campaigns which are so different from each other, they aren't gonna give you that feeling of getting more. Like, once you finish Grace's campaign, you go to Leon's, and he's just not gonna be able to fulfill that want of more slow, intense horror. It's the same with finishing Leon's campaign and starting the game over again with Grace. I honestly wouldn't have minded if both campaigns were double the length that they are, because both of them were just so high quality. While the dual protagonist feature really works for the game as a whole, for each portion it kind of just feels like 2 short games stitched together to make one medium-sized game. While it may not technically be a problem for the game as a whole, I can totally understand why some people feel a bit unsatisfied with this game's length. This game also does, thankfully, feature a wealth of bonus content and replayability. Like with every other modern RE game, this game features many different post-game challenges to complete, such as knife-only runs and no-heal runs. Each achievement also is a challenge in the game's menu. Upon completion of a challenge, you unlock a certain amount of challenge points that can be used to unlock bonus items, concept art, and costumes. I think this game has a substantial amount of content that will satisfy many RE fans for many playthroughs to come, myself included. I do kinda have one small gripe with Requiem's post-game unlockables, however. After my first playthrough, I was able to unlock 60% of the achievements, although I couldn't really buy anything cool from the bonus shop besides a knife for Grace and more combat points for Leon. RE Village has probably my favorite post-game for any RE game, with me beating that game once a day for like 5 days straight after that game came out. There was just so many cool unlockables in Village that made getting some of the harder achievements a lot easier, which meant I was able to beat the game knife only and on the hardest difficulty. This game does have infinite ammo guns and whatnot, but off first impressions, it seems like there's not as much here as Village at least. I'll have to dive into it more to see if that's actually true, but I wanted to mention it here. While the game's length was certainly something I took note of, it wasn't a huge issue in my opinion. For me personally, Requiem's biggest issue is its opening act. I think that Requiem has the worst opening of any modern RE game. It is visually impressive, however, beyond that, there's not much here. Gameplay-wise, it's not great. You play as Grace and Leon twice each before getting into the actual start of the game, and really the only good part of it is with the shadow monster like I described earlier. Both of Leon's sections are just him walking around killing zombies, which is fine, but you really only have the pistol, so it's not as fun as it could be. It's Grace's first section, which is the first section of the game, that I really dislike. It starts off with a cutscene of Grace's boss at the FBI essentially saying to her, "Hey Grace, can you go investigate this murder at this hotel? I know something bad happened to you there, but you gotta get over it sometime." You go to the hotel and gameplay-wise, it's just so boring. You literally just walk around doing nothing but watching cutscenes. It's just not engaging because the writing is just so poor. You see a flashback of what happened to Grace at the hotel, and it just makes her boss forcing her to return here make no sense at all. It's really just a slow, boring, drawn out, and unfun way to start the game. If you're able to get past the intro, I think fans of modern Resident Evil will love this game a lot. The biggest reason for that is besides some story stuff, this game does not reflect the franchise before Resi 7 whatsoever, to the point where it technically goes ahead and canonizes the remake of at least RE2 over the original. I just think it's so interesting how monumental the modern era of Resident Evil has been to the franchise, and how a new mainline entry is directly pulling from the remakes instead of previous games in the series. I personally prefer the modern era, so I don't mind it at all. I just find it interesting how we've gotten to this point. I will say, however, that this game does indeed have a lot of callbacks to previous games in the modern era, and even a few Easter eggs to the series as a whole. This game does lean heavily into nostalgia at certain points, especially at one big point during Leon's campaign. Being a fan of the series, I obviously love this, although I do wonder what people new to the franchise will get out of this game. Like, some of the biggest moments and callbacks just may ring off a bit hollow if you don't know what it's referencing, so maybe that could be a potential issue for some people. I think it would be fair to call this more of a celebration of the modern era rather than the franchise as a whole. There are certainly a ton of callbacks narratively to earlier games in the franchise, but especially gameplay-wise, this pulls directly from the RE Engine games. This game is the perfect combination of what made all 5 modern games prior to this so great, and I love it for that. I do think it's worth asking, however, where does the franchise go from here? I've seen a couple reviews point out that this game kind of just feels like a retread of where the series has been, rather than evolving the series into something new, and honestly, I don't disagree. I think it's fair to say that while both sections add new elements, especially Grace's, which I actually do think is a new approach to horror for the series, this is essentially just RE7, 2R, and 4R combined. I actually think that's kind of the point though. While this game does add some gameplay shakeups, what's so new and unique about it is the contrast between Grace and Leon. This is the first game where we've seen such an expertly crafted contrast between two characters, and that's why it works so well, especially as a celebration of their modern franchise. I do think, however, that the inevitable RE10 cannot use this same approach, as if we keep just getting clones of previous games over and over, it's gonna get stale after a while. So while I do love Requiem, I think it's worth wondering where the franchise will go next. Resident Evil Requiem does what RE6 couldn't. It successfully merges the two different gameplay styles, action and horror, all while not falling short on story, gameplay, or pacing. I don't think it's a perfect game with a weak opening and feeling much shorter than it actually is. Besides that, however, Requiem is a perfect celebration of the modern era of the franchise, fantastically integrating elements from multiple games in this era, while even including some Easter eggs and big nostalgic moments. While Requiem may not be my favorite Resi game, it's really close to being so. I loved my time with this game, and I think you will too. I cannot wait to see where this series goes next, hopefully with the rumored Code Veronica remake next year. I recommend Resident Evil Requiem. 9 out of 10. Well, y'all, that's my review of Resident Evil 9. If you liked this video, I'd really appreciate it if you could like, comment, or even subscribe. That's all I got today for this review, but I do want to take the last few moments to talk about me and my channel. Alright, so I want to start off by saying that I absolutely love this script. I think I did a fantastic job with it, and I think this might be one of my most detailed and best reviews ever. I'm serious, I love it. And I'm so happy it can be with a game that's so fantastic and that I love. I do want to say, however, though, that it's at best, this video will come out Friday, 1 week after the game came out. Or maybe more than 1 week. Did it come out on Thursday? I don't remember. It'll probably come out on Saturday, though. And that's just so annoying because it's I know people would love this video if they were able to watch it, but it's people aren't going to want to watch a review of this game because it's been out for so long. I did purposely write this review so it can work for people who haven't played the game, but also for people who have, so maybe in the future people will want to watch it. But it's just so annoying because it's I've had such a busy week this week, and I have such a busy week next week. This week, I had 2 exams and a group project, a fucking stupid group project with a stupid group. And then I had 3 exams next week. So I'm doing a bunch of studying, bunch of shit. And it's I've also started taking 2 more classes because the second half of the semester started this week. So yeah, I'm busy. I won't get into it all, but it's just, it's a little, I don't know, annoying that I'm so busy because I want to focus on this and I know that people would like my content, and it's YouTube is so dependent on timing, especially for things like this. So it's I don't know, it's just something I think about. I'm just really disappointed in myself, honestly, that I wasn't able to get this out sooner. And it's it's 11 p.m. at night, and it's am I really gonna have time to edit this, extract the video, which takes hours, and then make a thumbnail and do all that? Probably not. So then that means the video is gonna come out Saturday. And beyond all that, I don't have any time to play any video games. So I beat this game, and I've been playing the new Subway Surfers, which I'll get into later. But beyond that, I haven't played anything because I've been studying all day or working on this. So I don't know, it's annoying. But yeah, that's the first thing. So what's next? So the next video I want to make will be a review of Subway Surfers 2. I'm not gonna promise it because it is a mobile game, but I'm pretty certain I'll be able to make a long enough script to make into a video. I'm very familiar with Subway Surfers, so I'm certain I'll have enough to talk about. Beyond that, so spring break is, I guess, not next week, but the week after that. And I'll be going on a cruise, so I won't be able to make a new video or upload anything. Hopefully, I'll be able to pre-make uploads and then schedule them to release during that week. But it's like I said, I'm so busy, I'm not going to be able to promise that. I also have decided to potentially make a video on Crimson Desert. So I pre-ordered that game. I also pre-ordered Marathon, but I doubt I'm going to make a video on that. But I pre-ordered Crimson Desert, and I'm going to play it and see if I can find something or get excited enough to make a video about it, but not promising anything. But yeah, that's another really long game that's going to eat into my time. of playing other games. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Like, really, like I said, I absolutely love this script. I made a few mistakes, but not too many. So yeah, anyways, if you guys watch this far, like I said, I really appreciate it. I put a ton of effort into this video, so I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a nice comment or maybe some constructive feedback. But yeah, that's all I have for today. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye!